Sani Abacha, the dictator who hid billions around the world. Imagine waking up one morning to discover that billions of dollars meant to build your country's future had vanished into secret bank accounts scattered across the world. Schools were never built, hospitals never opened, roads remained unfinished. Millions lived in poverty while unimaginable wealth disappeared behind the walls of foreign banks. This is not fiction. It is the story of Sani Abacha, one of the largest corruption scandals in modern history. To understand the story of Sani Abacha, you must first understand Nigeria, a nation blessed with enormous oil wealth, fertile land, and one of Africa's largest populations. Nigeria possessed enough natural resources to become one of the world's great economic powers. Yet, during one of the darkest periods in its history, billions of dollars that could have transformed the lives of millions were allegedly diverted into private hands. The story of Sani Abacha is not merely the story of one military ruler. It is a cautionary tale about how absolute power, weak institutions, fear, and vast national wealth can combine to produce corruption on an extraordinary scale. The general who took power, Sani Abacha, became Nigeria's head of state in November 1993 after seizing power in a military coup following the political crisis caused by the annulled 1993 presidential election. Upon taking office, he dissolved democratic institutions, suspended parts of the Constitution, and ruled largely by military decree. His regime became known for its tight grip on power. Political opponents were jailed, exiled, or forced into silence. Independent newspapers faced restrictions, critics feared persecution, and civil liberties were severely limited. International condemnation intensified after the execution of environmental activist Ken Saro-Wiwa and 8 other Ogoni activists in 1995. Nigeria became increasingly isolated as many nations imposed diplomatic sanctions and questioned the legitimacy of Abacha's government. Fear became one of the regime's most effective tools. Few officials dared challenge decisions made at the highest level, allowing power to become concentrated in the hands of a small inner circle. The money machine. While Nigeria earned billions of dollars from crude oil exports, investigators later uncovered what they described as one of the most organized systems of state looting ever documented. According to numerous investigations, Abacha allegedly instructed the Central Bank of Nigeria to release enormous sums of money under the justification of national security. Instead of being used for legitimate government purposes, much of the money was allegedly withdrawn in cash or transferred into accounts controlled by trusted associates. This was not described as a single act of theft, but as a systematic operation repeated over several years. The money then traveled through a sophisticated international network designed to hide its true origin. It moved through shell companies, secret foreign bank accounts, offshore financial centers, luxury property purchases, and complex investments spread across Europe, the Middle East, and other parts of the world. Every transfer made tracing the money more difficult. Mountains of cash investigators described extraordinary methods used to move public money. Large amounts of cash were allegedly packed into suitcases and transported by trusted couriers. Front companies disguised the ownership of assets. Family members and close associates reportedly managed overseas bank accounts and investments. Expensive villas, luxury apartments, businesses, and high-value properties were purchased abroad, making stolen public funds appear to be legitimate private wealth. It became one of the most sophisticated international money laundering operations ever linked to a head of state. How much was stolen? The exact amount may never be known. Different investigations have produced varying estimates, but international investigators generally believe that between $2 billion US and more than $5 billion US linked to Abacha and his network was diverted from Nigeria during his 5 years in power. Even decades after his death in 1998, additional assets have continued to be identified and recovered, suggesting that the full extent of the operation may never be completely uncovered. The human cost. The greatest tragedy was not simply the missing billions. It was what those billions could have achieved. Imagine what that money might have provided. Thousands of modern schools, hundreds of hospitals and clinics, reliable electricity for millions of homes, better roads connecting towns and villages, clean drinking water, employment opportunities for millions of young Nigerians. Instead, many citizens continued to endure poverty, unemployment, poor health care, failing schools, and chronic electricity shortages despite living in one of Africa's richest oil-producing nations. Corruption on this scale does more than empty government accounts. It weakens public trust, discourages investment, slows economic growth, and deprives future generations of opportunities they may never recover. Why it was so difficult to stop, several conditions allowed the system to continue for years. Military rule weakened institutional oversight. Parliament had been dissolved. Courts operated under significant pressure. Independent investigations faced serious obstacles. Fear discouraged whistleblowers, and many public officials avoided questioning authority. When checks and balances disappear, corruption can flourish almost unchecked. The global hunt following Abacha's sudden death in June 1998, investigators from around the world began one of the largest international asset recovery efforts ever undertaken. Authorities in Switzerland, the United Kingdom, the United States, Jersey, Liechtenstein, Luxembourg, and several other jurisdictions worked alongside Nigeria to trace hidden assets. The process required years of forensic accounting, international legal cooperation, banking investigations, court proceedings, and asset freezing orders. Recovering stolen wealth proved far more difficult than stealing it. Over the years, more than $4 billion has been returned to Nigeria through successive international recovery efforts, while additional assets have continued to be identified and repatriated. The recovered money became globally known as the Abacha loot, luxury while millions lived in poverty. Investigators linked stolen funds to luxury villas, mansions, foreign bank accounts, expensive investments, and high-end real estate across several countries. The contrast was striking. While enormous fortunes were allegedly hidden overseas, millions of ordinary Nigerians struggled with failing hospitals, overcrowded classrooms, unemployment, deteriorating infrastructure, and unreliable public services. It remains one of the defining reasons why Abacha's legacy continues to divide opinion in Nigeria and around the world. Why the story still matters. The Abacha case has become a landmark example in the global fight against grand corruption. Universities, anti-corruption agencies, financial investigators, and international organizations continue to study the case because it demonstrated several enduring lessons. Stolen public money can move quickly across international borders. Complex financial systems can be exploited to hide illicit wealth. Recovering stolen assets may take decades. International cooperation is essential for tracing hidden funds. Recovering money does not erase the economic and social damage already inflicted on a nation. The case also contributed to stronger international anti-money laundering laws and greater scrutiny of politically exposed persons by banks around the world. The lasting lesson. The story of Sani Abacha is not simply the biography of one military ruler. It is a warning about what can happen when immense political power exists without accountability. The billions allegedly diverted did not simply disappear from government accounts. They represented hospitals that were never built, schools that never opened, roads that were never completed, businesses that never received support, and opportunities that millions of Nigerians never had. More than a quarter of a century after his death, the Abacha corruption scandal remains one of the largest and most extensively investigated cases of state looting in modern history. It stands as a powerful reminder that corruption is measured not only in stolen money, but also in stolen futures. History remembers Sani Abacha not only as a military ruler, but as the central figure in one of the world's most notorious corruption scandals. A case whose consequences continue to shape Nigeria and influence the global fight against corruption today.